Good afternoon, Sir Sawal. My name is Sean Michael Egan, and today I will be presenting you the Sun operating system. Now, without further ado, let's get started with our agenda for today. For our agenda, today we will be discussing the brief history, the technical specifications of the Sun operating system, its components, and lastly, its security principles. So, for a short introduction, the company Sun Microsystems was the company that created the Sun OS. Now, the Sun OS was founded by a group of visionary engineers and programmers that previously worked on a project called the Unix BSD system at Berkeley University. This Unix system has its ties to the free BSD system that I talked about during my on-site reporting. Now, SunOS contained different elements from the Unix system such as SysMV and BSD. And the SunOS was based on the BSD system from version 1.0 to 4. However, due to licensing issues, it evolved into another operating system, and in 1992, the company released a operating system called Solaris, which was based on System V Release 4 and was now the successor of Sun OS. And it's stayed compatible with the previous applications that worked with the Sun OS. Now, the Sun OS, as was stated, is the predecessor of the Solaris. Now, the new operating system ran into challenges and competition due to Linux operating system, and it tried to release a project called Open Solaris in order to compete. However, it did not really gain as much momentum as one would have hoped. Now, lastly, the Sun Microsystems was acquired by a company called Oracle back in 2010, which continued to develop this Solaris until they lost focus on it. Now, the Solaris operating system is the one that is still continuing to this day. However, the Sun OS is no longer supported. Now, moving on, let's talk about the technical requirements of the Sun operating system. So, CPU scheduling. Firstly, let's talk about the process management of the Sun operating system. We will talk about the process management, memory management, storage management, and lastly, the device management in this segment. So firstly, let's talk about the CPU scheduling and synchronization. So the way that the Sun operating system scheduled its processes is through different scheduling algorithms. So we have the first come, first serve basis, then the shortest job first, and now the round robin. Now what do these mean? So firstly, the first come, first serve is quite self-explanatory. Whichever process whatever processes arrives first are what is executed when they arrive right away. Then shortest job first means whatever process contains the shortest amount of time is next in the queue. Now, lastly, the round robin means that each process gets a fixed amount of time slice to execute whatever they need to do. So, in terms of synchronization, the operating system ensures that the resources are shared safely. So, the methods of synchronization include the mutual exclusion and the semaphores. So, mutual exclusion, or mutex, makes it so that only one process is able to access a critical section of the operating system at a given time. Then, semaphores are used to count and allocate the resources that are needed to coordinate the access that each process has and needs. Now for multi-threading and multiprocessing, the Sun OS uses a different variety of multi-threading concepts such as the user level threads and the kernel level threads. This is in order to enhance and upgrade the system in terms of performance and also the utilization of its resources. Now firstly, the user level threads. They are light units of execution that are managed by the user and user level libraries, which is why it's called the user level threads. So the goal of this user level threads was to implement lightweight processes because it's light units of execution. So lightweight processes which control the threads in a single process. Then for multiprocessing, the OS used a symmetric multiprocessing architecture. Now this meant that multiple processors shared a single kernel at a time, and they have each CPU has equal rights to one another. This improves the ability of the operating system to perform tasks at the same time across different levels of CPU. So moving on to memory management. So for paging and segmentation, the Sun OS did utilize a paging system for memory management. Now, the paging system is a system and a technique where it divides the physical memory into sort of blocks. These blocks have a fixed size and they're called frames. Now, this paging system allowed for less memory to be wasted and simpler to share as well as separating the other processes from one another because they're in certain frames and blocks. Now, just the segmentation of the operating system had limited capabilities, so it wasn't as needed, wasn't as talked about in comparison to the paging system. So it's not as prevalent as the paging system due to how complex the segmentation was and its technique. So for memory allocation and deallocation techniques, the memory allocation of the Sun operating system was a dynamic memory allocation scheme. Now the system calls has had words such as SBRK and MMAP in order to request memory from the system. So once the system receives the request, it goes to the system, the memory management unit would be the one to allocate the frames needed to fit the size of the request. Now, still on memory management, we'll be talking about the virtual memory, paging, and deadlocks. Now, the Sun OS has virtual memory implemented into its system. The virtual memory has the illusion that the operating system has more space than what is actually physically available. So it uses the secondary storage for the RAM in order to make it seem like it has a larger space than the actual physical RAM. The virtual memory needs a virtual address space because it's virtual. So it needs a virtual address space, a page table, and a swap space. Now, what do these things do? The address space allows for more memory access. The page table maps the virtual address to the actual physical address of the data. And the swap space dedicates a space in the disk to store things such as inactive files or pages. Now, deadlocks are able to occur. There are things that can occur in these virtual memory systems. This can happen because a process tries to get space and resources, which can lead to two processes holding each other back because both of them want the same thing. And they're both waiting for the other, which leads to a deadlock. Now, in order to solve these deadlocks, algorithms and detection systems were put into place in order to lessen the risk of these things happening. And if they do happen, it'll find them and solve them as quick as possible. Then the algorithm and detection would keep track of the resources and the interactions that are happening within the operating system in order to prevent a deadlock from happening. Moving on to storage management. The Sun OS has a comprehensive storage management system, and it's comprehensive due to its efficient use of disk space, file systems, and secondary storage. So, firstly, the management of disk space. In order to manage the disk space, the Sun OS used a variety of techniques such as file systems, disk quotas, and file deletion and archiving in order to manage its disk space. So, firstly, file systems. The Sun OS used the Unix file system in order to organize the disk because the Sun OS was based on the Unix file system. Now, moving on, it provided structured storage for files that allowed for efficient storage. And that efficient storage made it easier for people to retrieve the data that they needed. Disk quotas. Now, disk quotas were able to be freely set up by the administrator or the user to prevent users from exceeding the storage limit of the allocated disks. Now, the Sun OS also provided an archiving feature. This archiving feature allowed the users to move less used files into a secondary storage to save some space. So for file system organization and management strategies, as previously stated, it used the Unix file system, which organized the disk that the OS was using. It also had two other systems, such as the CODA and the network file system. The CODA was a distributed file system that allowed access to remote file systems that were locally mounted. Then the network file system allowed access to remote files. Network file system had a client server, my bad, had a client server protocol that dealt with the accessibility of file systems over a network. This system allowed the OS to share their file systems with other machines that could also use a network file system. So in terms of structure, it had a hierarchical structure in nature. hierarchical in nature, and a tree-like structure that organizes the files effectively and efficiently. Moving on to device management. The Sun OS used drivers. It used drivers to connect the hardware to the OS itself. That is their middle ground. And the drivers are interpreters that translate the request from the operating system into instructions for the hardware so that they could communicate. So some key components in this communication are the device drivers, input-output drivers, and as well as the operating system itself. The device drivers, firstly, are essential for communication, as previously stated, between the OS and the hardware. And the input-output devices included hardware such as disks, printers, and other things that can interact with the operating system through these device drivers. Lastly, the operating system provided the interface in order to access the device. There are two device access methods that the Sun OS can use: character devices and block devices. So, firstly, character devices. These can be dealing with data in a byte interface for data transfer, while on the other hand, the block devices deals with efficient data transfer for bulk operations, well, in blocks. So it's like byte interface and then bulk operations. So big, small, then big. Then for input output operations and scheduling, the operating system use different methods and combines the uses of the hardware and the software in order to manage the input output operations. This in turn makes the software and operating system run smoothly. So for hardware, the SunOS has interrupt handling and direct memory access. So interrupt handling refers to the fact that the devices could stop or interrupt the CPU, to tell it that the input-output operation is done, is completed. Then direct memory access allows the device to directly access the memory to transfer data without needing the CPU to interfere. Then for software, the device drivers and input-output scheduling are the mechanisms used. So we already talked about how the device drivers are the way that they transfer things. It's the way that they communicate the OS and the hardware. So it has this role in data transfer. Then for the input-output scheduling, there's algorithms set in place such as the first come first serve and shortest time first. Now let's move on to the components of the operating system. We have the hardware requirements, the kernel, and the shell of the operating system. So for hardware requirements, the Sun operating system needed at least a 200 megahertz CPU because it dealt with something called the Spark-based system. So for the Spark-based system, it needed 200 megahertz, and for 86-based systems, it only needed 120 megahertz. Then in regards to memory, it needed a 128 megabytes of RAM as a minimum. Then it's actually required and recommended to have at least 256 megabytes of RAM for a smoother operation. Then 512 megabytes of RAM is recommended for systems that will run a graphical user interface or a GUI. Then lastly for storage, the minimum amount of space that was needed was 16 gigabytes in order to run the OS itself, user applications, and temporary files and store all of them. Moving on to the kernel, the type of kernel that the Sun operating system used is a monolithic kernel architecture. It used that to manage the resources of the system and the functions of the user applications. Now, the monolithic kernel allows for simple, efficient, and as a performing kernel that's simple to maintain and has direct access to the resource, and direct access to the resources, and can do so efficiently. Now, for shell, it used a Bourne shell or the original Unix shell command interpreter. This is very similar to the FreeBSD operating system that I talked about before. Now, the user interacts with the operating system using the shell. Here's a quick glance at the terminal. And the shell is a command line interface. So firstly, the user will be presented with a command line login prompt before seeing a graphical user interface or a GUI. Then after logging in, they can type in symbols in order to start entering the commands needed. Now, the shell is the intermediary or the mediator between the user and the kernel. It's where they put input the commands, as we just said. Then we move on to our last part, which is the security principles. So we would talk about the security principles and vulnerabilities and protocols, then the access control mechanisms and user authentication, lastly the solutions for these vulnerabilities found. So for security principles, the OS follows some security principles and employs some security protocols in order to make sure that the user and the data of the user stays safe. So the OS grants the user and the processes the minimum level of access needed. So it has access restriction. So it only needs the minimum level of access needed to do whatever task they are executing. It doesn't give them more than that in order to make sure no one has any unauthorized access. So this reduces the potential damage caused by any risky account or task that it will have on the operating system. Now the jobs of critical tasks aren't done in the same place. They're separated. So they has job separation and they're all separated and distributed to different users to make it more difficult for one of the entities to get unauthorized access to the system. It also has resource protection by controlling its critical data and resources via access control mechanisms. Some vulnerabilities that the operating system can face are buffer, privilege escalation, and exploits. So for the buffer, it means when a program is writing more data to a buffer than it was originally allocated. So it writes more than it actually has. So then it leads to overwriting of a memory location, and then that overwriting could potentially be infected with malicious code, and therefore being a vulnerability within the system. Then for privilege escalation, it refers to attacks that take advantage of the system and change their permissions from a regular user to a higher privilege. Then the exploits refer to vulnerabilities in the network services or applications that could be exploited in order to gain access to the operating system. Next, we have the access control mechanisms and user authentication. Now, some access control mechanisms of the OS included file system permissions, user account and passwords, and device permissions. This is quite simple. So the file systems have permissions as to who could read, write, and execute them, and they were assigned to different users and the owner of the file. Then the user accounts and passwords were the way that the user could protect their account from unauthorized access, and device permissions allowed the devices to be restricted from other users. And the user authentication used was through passwords, and they use a password hashing algorithm in order to store their passwords safely and securely. However, that algorithm could be beaten through brute force attacks over a period of time. Lastly, for the solutions of these vulnerabilities, the Sun Microsystems had many approaches to solve the vulnerabilities that they saw, including security patches, password requirements, and a firewall. Now, for security patches, they address whatever vulnerabilities that they knew existed to be in their software. And they also made the users have strong passwords by requiring, an amount of characters, special characters, and such. This ensures that their accounts would stay safe because they would not have easy passwords to guess. Lastly, they would contain a firewall in order to protect the system from remote attacks. And now that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something.